The wooden bed frame groaned with a piercing, rhythmic shriek, a sound so startling in the midnight silence that I instinctively stopped breathing. Through a partition no thicker than a sheet of cardboard, my younger sister lay in a deep slumber, while my parents were settled in their own room directly beneath us. There I was, just 19 years old, enveloped in a thick, rural darkness next to the man I had married a mere 9 hours prior. I bit down on my pillow until my jaw throbbed with a dull ache, trying to endure a strange sensation in my body for which I had no name, no warning, and no understanding. I was a stranger to my own form. In my world, I had never glimpsed a biological diagram, nor had I ever heard the word intimacy spoken aloud. The only reference I possessed for the act occurring in that bed was the livestock I had watched on our family dairy farm. That was my wedding night, a confusing mixture of sacred duty and terrifying ignorance. I lay there paralyzed, caught between the traditions of my people and the silent, overwhelming reality of a womanhood I was never taught to claim.
I am Rebecca, and my soul was forged in the quiet, disciplined heart of Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. Within the strict confines of the old order Amish, my childhood was a tapestry of dairy farms, horse-drawn buggies, and 3-hour sermons delivered on hard wooden benches. In our world, the ordinum, our sacred, unwritten code of conduct, governs every breath we take and every stitch of our clothing. Life there is beautifully simple, but spiritually rigid, and the human body is treated as a dangerous vessel that must be carefully guarded. From a young age, we were taught that God designed marriage as a divine path, and that He would provide all the necessary guidance when the hour of union arrived. Discussion was strictly forbidden. Curiosity was viewed as a gateway to the sin of pride. We lived in a world where the concept of physical desire was erased from our vocabulary, replaced by the weight of duty and the promise of salvation. As I stood on the threshold of adulthood, I possessed the skills to run a household and manage a farm, yet I remained a child in the understanding of my own existence.
My preparation for the most intimate transition of my life was nothing more than a ghost of a conversation, a hurried exchange of whispers. Josiah had courted me for 14 months through the ancient tradition of bundling. We spent many Saturday nights lying fully clothed on top of the covers, talking in hushed tones until the gray dawn broke through the window. Our physical history was a modest collection of moments, a hand held tightly under a heavy quilt, and a single brief kiss on my forehead that had once made my entire body flush with a heat I mistook for illness. 3 weeks before the wedding, my married sister Rachel finally broke the silence. She pulled me behind a line of snapping laundry and whispered 13 words that would become my only guide. "It will hurt the first time. Just breathe. It will eventually get better." On the very eve of the ceremony, my mother sat on the edge of my bed for exactly 2 minutes. She added only that my husband would know what to do, and that my job was to be willing and patient. She kissed my brow and left, leaving me to face a mystery I could not even begin to visualize. The wedding day was an exhausting marathon of tradition, beginning in the pre-dawn chill at 4 a.m. I started my morning as I had for years, milking cows in the barn, but today my hands shook against the cold pails. By mid-morning, I was wearing a new dark blue dress, sewn by my mother, as over 300 guests arrived by horse and buggy. We gathered in our cleaned-out barn, where the bishop's voice echoed off the concrete floors during 3.5 grueling hours of sermons. Every word focused on a wife's submission and her sacred duty. There were no rings, no flowers, and no public kisses. Such ornaments were forbidden by our faith. Instead, the day was filled with the heavy labor of serving a massive meal to hundreds of people and cleaning up until the sun dipped below the horizon. By the time the last buggy departed, my feet were swollen and my head was splitting with tension. Underneath the physical fatigue ran a cold, dark river of dread. I finally climbed the stairs to the spare room where my grandmother had passed away, my heart hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs. When Josiah finally entered the spare bedroom, the flickering kerosene lamp cast long, shaking shadows against the walls, revealing a truth the bishop had never mentioned. Josiah was just as terrified as I was. This man, who could frame a house with his bare hands and shoe a powerful horse, looked like a lost boy in the dim light. He sat on the edge of the bed, causing the mattress to dip heavily under his weight. We sat in a deafening silence for a long moment. Before he reached out, his palm slick with sweat, and confessed in a trembling whisper that he had no idea what we were supposed to do. It was a tragic irony that struck me with a sudden, sharp clarity. We were two capable adults who could deliver a breech calf and manage a massive dairy farm, yet we were utterly helpless in the sanctuary of our own bedroom. Our tradition had decided for 300 years that ignorance was the equivalent of purity. He leaned forward and blew out the lamp, plunging us into the absolute darkness of a house without electricity. In that heavy, sightless void, we began a journey of fumbling, awkward desperation. The act itself was brief, clinical, and sharp. Josiah followed the only frame of reference he possessed, the instinctive behavior of the animals we had raised in the barn. Neither of us understood that a woman's body requires more than just proximity. It requires tenderness, patience, and a slow emotional preparation that no one had ever mentioned. I bit down hard on my pillow to stay silent, listening to the shallow rhythm of his breathing, while my sister slept undisturbed on the other side of the thin wall. I didn't ask him to stop, not because I didn't want to, but because I truly didn't know that stopping was an option. In our world, this was God's design, and you do not interrupt a divine plan. You simply endure it. Afterward, as Josiah rolled away and fell into a heavy, exhausted sleep, I lay awake for hours in the cooling room. I felt a profound, soul-aching loneliness that I couldn't explain. I had expected a door to open or some spiritual transformation to occur, making us one flesh as the Bible promised. Instead, I felt exactly the same, only sore, bewildered, and isolated. For months, our intimacy followed this same hollow, repetitive pattern. It was always brief, always functional, and always devoid of pleasure. It wasn't until I finally left the community and faced the agonizing sting of shunning that I heard the words from my own experiences: consent, arousal, and anatomy. At 22 years old, I sat in a therapist's office and looked at a simple medical diagram, finally learning the names of the parts of a body I had lived in for 2 decades. I wasn't filled with anger. Instead, I felt a devastating, soul-crushing sadness for that young girl biting her pillow and for Josiah, who was trapped in his own cycle of ignorance. We had failed each other in that bedroom, yet neither of us knew we were failing. Today, I carry the many gifts of my heritage, the work ethic, the deep faith, and the quiet duty of the dawn. But I also carry the hard truth. Surviving a world that tried to hide your own body from you like a dangerous secret is a victory. Your body was always yours, even when they told you otherwise.